It's 2 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling and your mind starts spinning. You replay a conversation from 3 days ago, mapping out every alternate response you could have given until you're completely frozen in a loop of what-ifs. Psychologists call this state analysis paralysis. It happens when we evaluate a situation so intensely that our ability to actually make a decision or take action shuts down entirely. The standard modern advice for this is usually pretty blunt. Just stop overthinking. We are told to distract ourselves, push the thoughts down, or force our minds to quiet. But attempting to forcefully silence your inner voice triggers what researchers call an ironic rebound. The harder you try to suppress an unwanted thought, the more intensely it fights its way back to the surface. Whenever we declare war on our own thoughts, we trigger a primal fight-or-flight response against our own brain. That struggle is exhausting, and it leaves us drained without ever actually solving the original paralysis. Curious, we might consider that our cultural diagnosis is missing the mark. Perhaps the issue isn't the sheer volume of our thoughts. Ancient philosophers didn't view intense contemplation as a medical defect. To thinkers like Aristotle, trying to understand the world through continuous, deep analysis is a basic, beautiful human activity. Philosopher Saraswati Guha argues that if thinking is done right, asking the right questions at the right time, then the length of the process isn't the problem. The pain actually comes from erratic and erroneous thinking. This perspective shifts the focus from a volume problem to a structural one. We find clarity by systematizing our mental patterns rather than trying to silence them. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer argued that our mental suffering is fueled by what he called the will, a blind, insatiable drive for survival and satisfaction that constantly generates new fears and desires. This drive traps us in an illusion of control. It convinces us that if we just analyze a future scenario long enough and map out every possible variable, we can guarantee a perfect outcome and avoid failure. To break that illusion, we can look to the Stoic philosopher Epictetus. He taught that peace requires a strict, relentless separation between the things we can actually control and the things we cannot. Let's apply this to a modern, everyday scenario. Let's say you put a pizza in the oven, fall asleep, and burn it to a crisp. Your mind will immediately want to evaluate everything about this situation, but the fact that the pizza is ruined is in the past, and the fact that your neighbors might be annoyed by the smoke alarm is an outcome determined by other people. Both belong entirely in the uncontrollable category. Any energy spent dwelling on them is wasted. The only valid place to spend your mental energy is on your next actionable step, putting a new pizza in the oven and setting an alarm on your phone so you don't fall asleep again. That is the core definition of wrong thinking. It is the agonizing expenditure of your cognitive power on variables you have absolutely zero power to change. Since we cannot completely control the future or prevent our brains from generating fearful scenarios about it, we have to change how we react when those thoughts arrive. This flowchart maps out the common reactions we have to painful thoughts. When we fuse with our anxieties, believing and acting on every impulse, it leads straight to exhaustion, where nothing gets done. And as this section shows, trying to fight off those feelings isn't any better. If you distract yourself, push the thoughts down, or constantly argue with your own cognitive biases, you get stuck in a futile struggle. Modern psychology offers an alternative called diffusion. When your brain throws out a painful worst-case scenario, you appreciate that your mind is just doing its job to protect you. You silently thank it for the warning, and then you step back, refusing to engage in the fight. Diffusion allows us to abandon the internal fight, clearing the path for higher logic to finally operate. But even after you drop the struggle and detach from the illusion of control, some anxiety will inevitably remain. So what do you do with that feeling? The 19th century philosopher Søren Kierkegaard offered a radical way to look at this lingering dread. Kierkegaard realized that this baseline existential anxiety isn't a medical defect or a sign that your brain is broken. He described it as the profound dizziness of freedom. When you stand before a multitude of choices, knowing you are responsible, you feel dizzy. That tension is the ultimate proof of your self-awareness and your agency as a human being. To feel anxious in the face of a big decision means you are fully awake. You are no longer paralyzed in the past. You are staring directly into the profound, open possibilities of your life. Effective thinking relies on a balance between our different mental states. This diagram illustrates a psychological concept known as the wise mind, representing that ideal state of highly functional thinking. In the overlapping center, this state balances the factual logic of the reasonable mind with the raw signals of the emotional mind to drive actionable choices. Do not stop thinking. Step back from the struggle, accept the things you cannot control, and use your brilliant mind to navigate your freedom.